Simply hitting the gym isn't all it takes to optimize muscle growth. What you do with your diet and what you do before and after your workout is equally as important, if not more important. So today I want to give you guys a list of what you should be doing consistently to build more muscle. And before we jump into the more obvious things like staying in a calorie surplus, I want to start with some exciting research that you probably haven't heard of before about the effects of eating olives. Now make no mistake, of course it's much more important for you to ensure that you have your basics down, like staying in a calorie surplus and getting enough protein. But eating olives can't really hurt you, and most people don't realize that eating them daily may actually help promote muscle growth. For example, Italian researchers recruited a group of people between the ages of 18 and 65 to eat a dozen green olives every day for 30 days. At the end of the 30 days, the participants were able to drop an average of 1.7% body fat while adding over 2% lean muscle mass. This equated to an average of a little more than 2 pounds of muscle growth while still burning fat. Now, that may not sound like much, but it is significant and impressive because the people involved in the study didn't make any other dietary or exercise changes besides consuming the 12 olives per day. Originally, it was assumed that olives could benefit muscle growth due to their anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. This is because everyone in the study experienced a reduction in interleukin-6, which is a factor used to rate the level of inflammation throughout the body. And they also experienced a reduction in free radicals. But both of these things can happen just by eating more fruits and vegetables in general. So the more likely thing that led to improvements in body composition was a compound known as oleuropein, which is found in high amounts in olives and olive oil. And even though we do need more research on people to confirm this, we do currently have studies on animals that show that oleuropein has promising anabolic and anti-catabolic effects. Besides, like I said, other than taking in like 50 to 70 extra calories, eating 12 olives per day isn't going to be bad for you. So feel free to try that, or you can also replace cooking oils like canola, corn, and sunflower oil with extra virgin olive oil. Another thing that most people don't know is that consuming more cholesterol on a daily basis can benefit muscle growth. In fact, most people believe that dietary cholesterol is bad and that it causes heart disease, but that's actually not true. Research shows that there's no link between cholesterol intake and heart disease. But if you lift weights, cholesterol is actually beneficial because it can aid with muscle growth. One study specifically found a dose-response relationship between cholesterol intake and lean body mass, meaning that the higher cholesterol intakes were associated with more muscle mass. As you can see in the graph, the more cholesterol they ate, the more muscle they gained. And keep in mind, the participants kept protein and fat intake the same. They only changed their cholesterol intake. Now, the limiting factor of this study is that most participants were older, but this isn't the only study that shows higher cholesterol intakes improving muscle growth. Several other studies also indicate the same. The likely reason why cholesterol has this kind of effect is because it supports membrane viscosity, muscle repair, lipid raft formation, and the production of anabolic hormones like testosterone. Now, keep in mind, you don't have to go out of your way to consume as much cholesterol as possible. There comes a point where more isn't better, and consuming a lot of cholesterol might also mean that you'll have fewer calories available to be able to eat other nutritious foods. But to build muscle, it is beneficial to consume one or more servings of a cholesterol-rich food daily, such as eggs, beef, or dairy. Now, the next thing you should do every day, I've already mentioned, and that's eating enough calories daily. Guys, this is by far the most important thing to do. It should be at the top of your priority ladder, and the only reason why I didn't start the video with this first is because many of you already know about it. But at the same time, many of you are not actually following through and eating enough calories to build muscle. When you don't eat enough calories, you put yourself at risk for losing muscle. But when you're in a calorie surplus, you boost things like testosterone, IGF-1, and mTOR while reducing cortisol. This combined effect leads to more muscle protein synthesis and less muscle protein breakdown, which is a necessary prerequisite to gain muscle. On top of that, a calorie surplus that includes carbs will help you lift heavier and perform better by filling up your muscle glycogen stores. Just keep in mind that you only need a small calorie surplus to optimize muscle growth. Anything above that small surplus will just get stored as fat. So a 10% calorie surplus is a good guideline to start with. So if your maintenance level is at 2,500 calories, calories, a 10% increase would give you 2,750 calories per day. And you can always raise it later as long as you're not gaining fat. Also, if you're naturally lean, you can start with a 15% increase instead of 10. On the other hand, if you're someone that struggles with losing body fat, you have to be more careful and start with the 10% because you'll be more likely to store the excess calories as fat instead of using them for building muscle. This is because having higher levels of body fat will lower testosterone and impair carbohydrate tolerance. Let's move on to something else that you might not know, and that's the fact that for maximum muscle growth, you should do your absolute best to spread out your protein intake evenly throughout the day. I've repeated many times that even though intermittent fasting is great for fat loss, and even though you can actually build muscle while intermittent fasting is still definitely not the best way to build muscle. And you should definitely avoid the more restrictive fasting methods like the warrior diet and OMAD when trying to build muscle. That's because eating only 1 or 2 meals per day is not the best strategy to maximize muscle growth. Not only does it become a lot more difficult to take in enough calories, but we also have studies that show that spreading protein out more evenly throughout the day can give you an edge when it comes to building muscle. In fact, in a systematic review, leading sports scientists concluded that in order to maximize anabolism or muscle growth, you should do your best to spread your protein intake between a minimum of 4 meals, aiming for about 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram in each meal, which is about 0.18 grams of protein per pound. Spreading your protein out evenly is more beneficial for muscle growth because it'll help keep your amino acid levels elevated, ensuring that your body always has access to raw muscle building material. Also, in addition to the systematic review, we have a 2015 study that looked at the differences in protein synthesis rates between groups having an even protein distribution for each meal versus a skewed protein distribution. And the even protein distribution led to higher amounts of protein synthesis, making it a better choice for muscle growth. And there are a number of other studies that also support these findings. Of course, not only do you want to spread your protein intake out evenly, but you also want to make sure that you're eating enough total protein every day. Since muscle growth is all about building up more amino acids within a muscle than the amount that gets broken down, you literally cannot grow without eating enough protein daily. Now, according to the evidence, you only need about 0.73 grams of protein per pound of body weight when you're in a calorie surplus. Research shows that you don't need more unless you're in a calorie deficit. Preferably, do your best to get your protein from meals rather than supplements. But one supplement that you can take every day to boost muscle growth is creatine. Creatine is as good as it gets when it comes to natural muscle building supplements. And that's not me saying it, that's according to a meta-analysis published in the Journal of Physiology. Even when compared to over 250 natural muscle building supplements, creatine had the most beneficial effect on muscle growth. Now, it's important to note that not everyone reacts the same to creatine. But all in all, creatine is a top supplement for natural lifters, especially if you want to gain size. This is because creatine enhances muscle cellular hydration, which makes you appear bigger by increasing water retention within your muscles. Creatine also supports energy production during high-intensity exercise. This means you can train your muscles more effectively at the gym and lift heavier weights for more reps. For example, research shows that the average increase in weightlifting performance after creatine supplementation can be 14% greater than the average increase from taking a placebo instead. In other words, this study showed that taking creatine led to 14% more strength gains than not taking it. Now, if you're still not impressed, another meta-analysis found that creatine supplementation increased lean body mass by an average of 2.2%. So if you want to enhance muscle mass and gym performance, go ahead and supplement with creatine daily. It's cheap, safe, effective, and you only need 5 grams of creatine monohydrate per day to reap the benefits. Finally, the last thing and the most overlooked thing that you definitely want to do every day is get enough sleep. We all know that sleep is crucial for health and well-being, but few people realize that getting enough of it helps you grow muscle much faster. And not getting enough sleep makes it exponentially more difficult to grow. To illustrate this, we have a study that looked at how sleep deprivation affected muscle protein synthesis. In this study, men were divided into 2 groups. One group was allowed to sleep the full 8 hours per night, while the other group was limited to only 4 hours in bed per night. Biopsies from the quadricep were taken before and after the study to see the effect that the 2 different sleep patterns had on muscle mass. And the researchers found that muscle protein synthesis was reduced in the group that experienced sleep restriction. So if you want to build muscle faster, make sure to get enough sleep every day. So those are the things you should be doing every day. The most important ones for muscle growth are, of course, to maintain a calorie surplus, get enough protein, and get enough sleep. Aside from everything else that I already mentioned, you do, of course, need to also progressively overload your workouts by lifting heavier weights or performing more reps over time. I didn't mention that in this video because you really shouldn't work out every single day. Instead, you should leave at least one day off to allow your muscles and your central nervous system to recover. I hope this video has helped you out, and I really hope that you learned something new. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to the channel.